Good morning. My name is Jacob Fain, and I am a board member and past president with City Club of Central Oregon, and it is my honor to welcome all of you to today's forum. Our program today is Shiny Happy People, the paradoxes of living in Central Oregon. And we want to begin by thanking the sponsors who help make today's forum possible. I'll start by thanking our platinum and gold sponsors, ASI Wealth Management, the City of Bend, Central Oregon Community College, the Desert Pine Group at Morgan Stanley, OSU Cascades, St. Charles, Central Oregon Association of Realtors, and Brooks Resources. I'd also like to especially thank St. Charles Health Systems, who is our presenting sponsor for today's forum. Sponsors are a critical part of our mission and keep City Club going. Thank you all for your support. Before we begin today's program, I'm excited to spend a few minutes to share with you an update on City Club, where we are, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there together with your financial support. I've been active with City Club as a member, as a board member, as a forum sponsor, an annual sponsor, and a donor for over a decade. And I firmly believe that City Club is a very special and unique organization in our region. Our focus at City Club is building an informed and engaged community, and we carry that out through our mission to foster greater understanding of topics important to all of you and all of our futures in this amazing place that we call home. Today, City Club offers 10 forums a year. We present a diverse topic list that includes the topics on the growing number of people who are experiencing houselessness in our region, unraveling the myths of people who are in foster care. We unpacked the legalization of psilocybin and what it means for our community, and took a look at e-bikes as a growing transportation source. And I hope you'll join us next month here at the Unitarian Church for our most highly attended program, the City Managers Forum, where you get to meet and hear from our local elected officials. Next slide, please. But we know Central Oregon has been growing. It continues to grow, and as the region grows, we want to ensure that we are meeting the changing needs that come along with this growth. We want to continue to build on what we've done since 2007, and we want to provide each of you an opportunity to be a bigger voice in where our community goes. So, just for a moment, imagine this. A place where we have civil and respectful conversations and learn how to better talk to each other about challenging and difficult topics. A place where you learn something new and relevant at every gathering, and a place where problem solving happens. We imagine doing this in 3 ways: bringing in top experts to discuss the topics that you have told us you want to know more about, creating more opportunities for you to share ideas with city leaders in less formal settings and at different times of day, and encouraging all voices to be heard by offering opportunities for free attendance at our forums. Next slide, please. But to do this, we need your help to bring these imaginings to life, which is why I'm happy to announce that City Club is launching our inaugural fundraising challenge campaign to make this vision a reality. We need your support to do that. We've already reached out to current board members, all of whom have given, and we've reached out to prior board members, and so far we've raised $25,000 in this shared vision. Today I'm up here to ask you for your support and helping us to raise an additional $10,000 that will allow us to meet our goal of raising $35,000 and allow City Club to bring in the experts, to provide sponsored attendance, and to host pop-up gatherings in immediate response to issues that are impacting our community. We hope that you value what City Club adds to the Central Oregon community and our commitment to building an informed citizenry. We hope you value the discussions and the civic engagement that occurs at these forums. We hope you value the knowledge that you gain, that you share with your friends and your neighbors. And we hope you value our commitment to each of you. If you value these things like I do, and like so many of us do, I hope you will give today. Every one of you has a pledge form on our table. It's that green sheet. And we've wanted to make it easy for you to give, so we provided two ways. One, there's a QR code. You can scan that. You can make a gift online. Or you can fill out the pledge form and hand it to one of the volunteers as you leave today. With that, I will thank you for your commitment to City Club, and thank you for your support of our inaugural fundraising campaign. And now it's time for our main event. We are honored to have Mo Carrick as our facilitator for our forum today. Mo is a leading expert in workplace culture, dedicated to facilitating human thriving at work. Mo is the author of 3 best-selling books and is the recipient of the Ben Chamber Woman of the Year Award, was named People and Culture Strategy CEO of the Year in 2023, and was named on Portland Magazine's Fastest Growing Companies. Mo has served as lead facilitator for the original Ben 2030 project and its refresh, and was TEDx Ben's lead organizer and raised her 3 children in Central Oregon as a resident since 1994. Please join me in welcoming Mo Carrick.
Okay, am I on? Hello. Hello. Ooh. I think I have to stay away from that mic so that I can move around. So I'm so excited to be with you all today. Really fun to see so many faces and look forward to chatting maybe closer to the end because Steve and I were heavy into prep as we were beginning. So I'm really honored to have worked with City Club to prep for this topic. It's one that's near and dear to my heart. And also, in particular, having Stephen here on the stage with me. You'll be hearing more from him in a minute. So we want to start by just doing, getting a little sense of what's up for you in the room about this topic, this idea of shiny, happy people, and the paradoxes of living in Central Oregon. So we've got a little poll we want to do. It's a word cloud, if you know what that is, right? It's just you're going to put some words in and they're going to come up on the screen. And so I'm going to go ahead. I believe on your stands, on your tables, there's a QR code. And yeah, go ahead and put the next slide up, if you would, with the Menti poll. You can also just go to menti.com and you can enter the code that's going to come up in a minute. Oh, that's my dog, by the way. That's me and that's my dog. And I am dedicated to facilitating human thriving at work. That's true. My company's called Moementum. I really believe that we spend more time there than we do anything else. And when we thrive at work, we thrive at home, which means we thrive in community, which means it benefits the world. So that's the work I do, is very focused on building leaders that are good for people, conscious, brave cultures, and teams that care. That's a little bit about me. But back to this interesting poll. What drew you to living in Central Oregon? Go ahead and scan the QR code or go to menti.com and enter the numbers 4440-4407. And we should have music playing or something while that all comes up. We're going to ask 2 questions this way, and this is the first one. And this will help Stephen and I get a sense of, what's in the room. What drew you to living here? I've been here 30 years. I've raised, as Jacob mentioned, I've raised all 3 of my kids here. Oh, look, we got music. Outdoors is staying in the center, I'm noticing. Family, nature, mountains. Interesting. And I'm going to let the team in the back let me know, or Quinn let me know when you're ready for us to just take a look at the poll, stop the polling, and we'll move on to the next question, because I'm not sure how many we are. Are we good? We're pretty much good? Okay. Yeah, we've got almost everybody, 212 responses so far. So just like lingering to look at this for a minute, it is really interesting, isn't it? You know, what drew us here. How many people, is there anybody here that was born here? Yes, yes. Good job. I think I saw 3. I saw 3 hands of all of that. So the rest of us got to answer the poll. Those 3 of you, you didn't have a choice. But you know, what's coming up is really consistent, right? The bigger words mean more comments came up on it. So clearly outdoors, family, nature, weather, mountains, community. Lots of commonality around what drew you here. I see small town, some of you job, culture, environment. So a lot of consistency and some real variation. Some of you putting really specific things like plan to raise kids, engaged community, small community, job opportunity. So, you know, you use some different words, but you're really aligned on some of what drew you here. So thanks for that. We're going to do one more question. This one is maybe a little more vulnerable. So let's go ahead and look at the next question. What is it that makes it hard for you and those in your immediate circle to live here? Not to scan the live here. That is a typo. I don't know why it says that, but what is it that makes it hard for those, for you and those that are in your immediate circle? I think of myself having raised 3 kids here. One of my adult children does live here, and something I've really noticed is the difficulty that he's having with affordable housing. As a teacher in our community, and it makes it really hard as a parent to have it be possible that my children can't live where I do because they can't afford it. So whatever that is for you, let's see it. What makes it hard sometimes? The smoke, yeah, the smoke is big this year for sure. Cost of living for sure. We see childcare up there. Lack of diversity, getting a bigger number. We're at 212 again. Yeah, again, some real consistency. A lot of these topics are things I've seen City Club tackle. I've seen the Ben Chamber under the leadership of Katie Brooks, who's in the room, really tackle around housing costs, around childcare accessibility, certainly affordability, low wages, lack of jobs, high cost of living. Yeah. Yep. There's some challenges with living here. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, is it? Even while it's one of the most beautiful places in the planet that we get to play in and enjoy. So I invite you to just sort of take this in as we begin to go through some content. The structure today is I'm going to just share a couple of thoughts. Then Stephen's going to share some thoughts, in particular around what he's learned in working with the local communities here in the region. And we're going to talk together a bit about some questions that have surfaced for us in prepping, and then you're going to talk with each other a bit at your tables about what you're seeing, and we're hoping to have some takeaways from that City Club can use kind of in an ongoing way, all right? So let's talk for just a minute. Let's linger on the topic that, you know, the title of this forum, Shiny Happy People. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And you know, we had a lot of conversation in planning this event about what is happiness. And this is a question I get asked a lot in the work I do, because people sometimes know me, they know about my books, and they say, oh, you're the one that wants everybody to be happy at work. And I'm always like, that's not what I want. And also, it's not really realistic. We're not happy at work every day. We might not even be happy for much of the day, right? But those moments of happiness really help us to feel like we're thriving. So happiness is, at its core, just a feeling. It's an emotion that we experience. It comes from when we experience joy, satisfaction, contentment. It's often influenced by a variety of external factors. The key, I think, about the word happiness or the emotion of happiness, like any emotion, is it's fleeting. It's temporal. It doesn't stay with us for very long, which is part of what makes it so precious, you know? And it's also one of the reasons why in organizations, for example, when we look at healthy culture, we're not measuring happiness. Because you can make your employees happy by bringing in pizza and beer, on Thursday for a little while. But if you bring it in every day, it doesn't actually generate the same feeling. So let's look at the next slide and differentiate a little. And in our language here today, we're going to talk a lot about a different word set to maybe consider, which is well-being. Well-being is a broader concept. It's also bandied about a lot. We also sometimes use the words well-being and wellness in the same sentence. I don't know that they're the same thing, not for me anyway. Well-being can encompass happiness, but it can encompass a lot of other things, like to what degree do we have meaningful relationships? How do we feel about our work? What's happening in our family dynamic? Do we have a sense of purpose? Are we physically or mentally healthy and well? Those things can really impact our overall well-being. And so I invite you to think about, although we're talking about happiness, and we lured you in here a little bit with this provocative title of Shiny Happy People, but really what we're about for long-term community sustainability and even individual sustainability really transcends happiness into a deeper concept of well-being that we're striving for. And yet, let's look at the next slide, please. All is not really well in the world or even here in Central Oregon. Oh, this is just, what I just already said. Well-being is more resilient. Yeah, thank you. I'm not very good at just reading my slides. Happiness overall is on the decline. Happiness is on the decline across the country, and I would say even across the globe. We are in a series of declines in the post-COVID-19 reality, and you can see some of the stats on the screen. Rates of suicide in the U.S. are increasing steadily since the 90s. Mental health, we're having a national mental health crisis and a global crisis as well. We have tensions with social media. Opioid use is up. We have poor social safety nets for people in need. And again, we're focusing on U.S. here, but this is not only in the U.S. The United Kingdom, as an example, appointed a new Minister of Parliament in 2018 called the Minister of Loneliness, whose singular job was to reduce isolation, especially amongst the elderly in the rural areas. Our Surgeon General, I'm not sure what's happening with our slides, but our Surgeon General here in the U.S., Dr. Vivek Murthy, who I respect immensely, has produced 3 really significant reports in the past 2 years. One is his workplace report on workplace mental health and well-being. Another is his report on loneliness. And the third is his most recent report on the impact of social media on young people, especially. And if you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to look at those data sets. They're extremely powerful. So our slides are snagged. I want to just make sure that I give you a couple of the stats that are the most interesting in my little notes here. While they come back. Perfect, excellent. Go back one more if you would. Thank you, perfect. So we talked about rates of suicide are increasing. 70% of U.S. workers in 2023 reported at least one mental health condition, and 84% say that their workplace is a contributor to their poor or declining mental health. And stress-related absenteeism, which is often attributed to loneliness in the U.S., costs employees an estimated $154 billion annually. And of course, if it's happening nationally or globally, it's happening locally. Right? That's just sort of like a paradigm that we want to reinforce. So let's go ahead and look at the next slide. Social isolation is on the rise. So happiness is declining and social isolation is increasing. Household family engagement, companionship, and social engagement are all down. This is estimated to cost probably a light estimate, $6.7 million in excess Medicare spending annually due to what needs to happen to keep elderly people feeling safe and connected. And this is increasing the risk of premature death as much as an individual human smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So these are kind of dire consequences. There's also a very specific dimension of this that is local for us. And let's go ahead and look at the next slide, please. Which is, this paradox here, right here in Central Oregon, as a mountain and desert town, is real. Social isolation is rising here due to pandemic, remote working, isolation issues related to parenting. All is contributing to lack of belonging, with Central Oregonians scoring only 3.6 out of 5 in terms of the strength of their belonging indicators. Recently, that was in 2023. And our own suicide rates have increased 4.1% annually since 2010. Now, this is not uncommon for mountain towns. If any of you have seen Bodie Miller's film, Trouble in Paradise, it's about the consistently high mental health issues and suicide rates in mountain towns, of which we are one. So it really elevates, I think, for all of us, the intensity of this paradox, which you may be feeling in your own life, in your own home, for sure. Next slide, please. So, the concept we want to introduce and that Stephen's going to talk about in just a few minutes is this idea of, all right, so we've got individual well-being and happiness. We've also got collective well-being. And collective well-being is one of the ways that we can manage some of the paradoxes that we see between isolation on the rise, happiness on the decline, and mental health challenges. And a paradox, for me, means something that we have to hold in our brain and in our heart at the same time that can seem opposing, right? And paradox and handling paradox is a key emotional intelligence skill. It's also a key leadership skill, right? Our ability to stand in the middle of two things that can feel opposite. Some examples are on the screen. One is the paradox of challenge and support. So, for example, in planning this event, Stephen and I had a lot of synergy. We had a lot of support. Good idea. That sounds great. This is awesome. We also challenged each other. Like, hang on a second. Do you think that really needs to go in there? Or what would you think about mentioning this? Just one is not enough. We can't deliver as high quality of an experience unless we both challenge and support each other. There's also the paradox of group and individual, which we're going to talk about quite a bit today. How do we manage the needs of the community, or the needs of the workplace or the organization, and the needs of the individual human? Because often they can be contradictory. For example, remote work. Remote work is wonderful for individuals. We're seeing really consistent results that people actually enjoy the flexibility of home. They also feel more disconnected than ever from the culture of their organization. And they're having trouble creating the kinds of relationships that contribute to high employee engagement. So how do we deal with the needs of the individual and the needs of the group? Because the business also benefits when people are in the same place sometimes, right? And both is the ultimate paradox. One of my favorite paradoxes is it's not my fault and I'm responsible. It's not my fault that systemic racism, sexism, heteronormativity exists, but I'm still responsible for figuring out how I want to navigate in that realm, right? And then lastly, and maybe the most relatedly for now, is the paradox of I feel like I belong, and I also feel like I'm on the outside. How many of you have ever felt that here in Central Oregon? It's just, that feeling of like, this is the right place for me, this is my community, and also, not really. I'm not sure. I've thought about that a lot since COVID, because even in my own neighborhood, I have a great neighborhood. I live over on the central district, and yet I'm sometimes loath to go out and talk to people. Have you guys ever felt that? Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh yeah, Laura's in the garden. I guess I'll go say hi. Maybe not. Maybe not, because it feels like a stretch to connect. I'm kind of introverted. It's easier to just sit down and read my book. Right? So there's a paradox there. So therefore, I might feel a little on the outside of my neighborhood, but I also really do want to feel belonging. We all really want to feel belonging. So, next slide, please. Let's dig into some of the specifics that create well-being here. And I'm delighted to introduce Stephen. I'll let you say more about yourself, other than it's been a delight to work with you on Bend 2030. And I know since that time, you've been doing so much good work here and all over the world, helping communities thrive. So welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is,
A little applause for Mo. I really appreciate the intelligence that Mo brings to her talks, and it's been an absolute delight working with her, getting ready for today's presentation. Mo's kind of our facilitator today, sharing all her wisdom that she has from working with organizations and workplaces, and I'm kind of the expert here to bring a little bit more of a local sense of what the challenge of being happy in Central Oregon might be. First of all, I should say that my background is as a long-range planner. I mainly work with cities and communities around the country. I've also worked quite a bit overseas in Australia and New Zealand. I think the current project I'm working on, the Newberry Regional Partnership, South Deschutes County, just putting a plug in for their terrific effort they're undergoing right now, is my 100th project. So it's kind of fun to bring it on back home. I also, speaking of mountain towns, I have worked with a number of mountain towns as well too. Bozeman, Montana, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Wenatchee, Washington, Flagstaff, Arizona. And I know what you're talking about, the challenges of mountain towns. There's this ideal lifestyle we all are drawn to and want to live. And then there's the reality of just getting by and having a life. So next slide, please, Kenny. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is based on my experience working with communities. And the two fundamental principles we kind of work with in doing a community visioning project, which Bend 2030 was, and which Envision Bend is now the owner of, is first of all, defining community values, and then identifying trends of change. And by looking into those two things, both what we value and how our lives are changing, really provide a foundation for articulating a community's vision. Next slide. Here in Central Oregon, we share a lot of values, and I think we saw that in your answers to the first question that was up on the screen earlier. What you like about being here is very close to what we value about living in this place. And the values and the communities I've worked with in Central Oregon, which include Sisters Country, Newberry Country, and of course the Greater Bend with the Envision Bend Vision Project, really has helped me kind of get a sense of what we share with our values and also how our values might diverge a little bit. It's core to everything. All three communities that I've worked in are the environment and recreation, and outdoor opportunities, the community feel, friendliness of people. That's certainly something that I personally value a lot. The spirit of collaboration. There are a lot of things that we do share, and people frequently mention those, and I think you saw that in the word cloud up on the screen. On the other hand, there are some distinct or divergent values from the different parts of Central Oregon, and certainly in the communities that I've worked in. In Bend, there is, even though we see it as an issue or a challenge, there is a growing appreciation for cultural diversity in Bend. We may not see it on the street as much, being a fairly white community, but it is changing, and people truly value that change, the richness that it brings to our community, the diversity of experiences. Also, our economy that's increasingly built on innovation. I know from the work of the Chamber and OSU Cascades and COCC, there's a lot of thought of going into, and part of that remote worker phenomenon that we're experiencing here is a reflection of our changing economy that we have here. And people do really appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that we are on the leading edge when it comes for how people work and the types of products that we're creating. So a shout out to all you remote workers, even if you might be a little bit lonely. Sisters, interesting. One of the core values there that's really prominent is being an age-friendly community. There are a lot of retired people who are moving to Sisters for that lifestyle, that small-town arts and culture kind of environment, and yet the community was not always well prepared to handle the needs and the desires of its elder populations. And that has changed a lot since they did their Sisters Country vision 5 years ago. And currently, as I mentioned, I'm working in South Deschutes County on the Newberry Regional Partnership Strategic Action Plan. And talk about diversity, it's amazing. From Sun River down to Lapine, and that project even extends into the North Klamath and Lake counties, that a range of values and opinions just within that area is really striking. And yet, it's what makes it so exciting for me to be there working with that community right now. It gets to that point of living with a little bit of tension or paradox, if you will, in terms of what individual people believe and how they work together to create a better community. But for Lapine, for example, it's their rural small town atmosphere, it's their independent spirit. There's a lot of people living out in the backcountry between Lapine and Sun River, and that's a lifestyle that people choose, and it's a reason they come to come to Central Oregon, and it's a thing that they value as well too. So we are a much more diverse region than you might think of originally, and it is reflected in our values. Next slide, Kenny. So I've talked a little bit about values. Now I want to talk about trends of change, because this is a big deal. Again, I don't think any community thinking about the future can plan for the future without understanding how the world around us is changing. And it is changing fast. So there are many drivers of change at the global level: population growth and increasing migrations. A lot of that migration due to climate change, which is, as we all know, is a major driving force on the planet right now. Scientific and technological advances with quantum computing and artificial intelligence. It's changing everything right now as I speak. And those changes, well, bring both benefits and challenges for us that we have to think about. Shifting civic and cultural norms. The difference in norms and values between baby boomers and Gen X, or people younger than Gen X, are very, very significant, and those values are changing the way we think about and move about in the world. Just guess anybody, who has millennial, or what's the next generation? I'm forgetting what. Alpha gens, yeah, right. Big changes. I read an article the other day about parents who didn't understand what their Alpha Gen kids were talking about. They had no idea what those words meant. Next slide, please. But the thing that I like to emphasize in my work is that everything global is local. So every trend of change that you read about on a daily basis in the newspaper about change that's running across the planet, it's all reflected here. It all comes back. In fact, I would make the argument that we experience global change personally at the local level more than we do about reading it in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. And in Central Oregon, those changes are big and deep. And that's part of our thesis for today, is the change that's sweeping across Central Oregon and our communities. What are Central Oregon's key trends of change? Obviously, growth, development, traffic congestion people like to talk about, the feeling of we're moving from being a big small town to a small city. Those things are really affecting the way we perceive and move about in the world. Driven by climate change at the global level, drought and wildfire and smoke, as we saw pop up on the graphic, are all big changes that are being manifested locally. Our economy is also diversifying well too, and I think this is largely a very positive change. But also on the darker side, income inequality. I mean, 1 in 10 households in Bend proper are living in poverty right now. So that's really not that much different from the national level or the state level. And of course, homelessness. The challenge of unhoused people on our street is in our face all the time, and it connects with other issues. For example, the notion that, fires are caused by homeless encampments. Well, yes, sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're caused by people doing target practice out in the woods or burning trash. So these issues, when you take all of this together, to me, it really means that we are changing very, very fast, and this challenges our happiness. My favorite definition of the future is things getting better and better, worse and worse, faster and faster. It's all happening at the same time. Next slide. So our paradox is when our values, what we love about living here, collide with the reality of change in our world. And as change continues to unfold, our core values can be challenged and our sense of happiness can suffer. It's what drives the paradox of living in a place like Central Oregon. Per our loneliness and mental health epidemic, what does this all mean for our communities? It's a big challenge. Next slide. But there are some answers out there, and here's just one of them, and it's one that anybody who is involved in planning, city planning, for example, or in community, nonprofits, et cetera, understands this to the T, and I would include certainly the City Club of Central Oregon, and that is social capital. Social capital really is defined as the networks of relationships that bind us together as people. The more social capital we have to spend, the less lonely, anxious, and depressed we tend to be. There's a direct correlation between those two things. Reaching out, being part of a community, connecting with people is part of what can make us happier. It's not the reason we do that, but it certainly is a benefit. Next slide. But I want to take it just a little bit deeper before I wrap up here, and that is the difference between bonding social capital and bridging social capital. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware of Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone. It was published 20 years ago, believe it or not. He was recently interviewed in the New York Times and basically said, it's not gotten better. You know, our social capital continues to decline. People are joining organizations less frequently. They're reaching out to people who are different from them less frequently. And our social culture has changed, and I would argue that this is directly reflected in what we're seeing happening at the national level in our national partisan politics. There's a direct correlation, in my belief, between a decline of social capital and the mean-spiritedness, frankly, that we are experiencing at the local level. It is a serious issue, and Robert Putnam was very contrite in his interview about what that means, feeling like maybe after 20 years of promoting social capital and the need for human connection, that he probably has not succeeded. But I don't think any one human being can do it. It's up to all of us to do that. So there are two kinds of capital, bonding and bridging. Bonding capital is about connecting with people who are like you, who share your values, your perspective, your outlook on life. It's probably pretty easy to do, although less possible in an era of pandemics and all of that stuff. It becomes more challenging to connect with people outside your immediate family. Bridging social capital is about spanning boundaries, about connecting with people who have different perspectives, different values, a different outlook on the world. And to me, both of these are very, very important. Bonding is really about making ourselves happy. Bridging is about building better communities. And I'm going to end with this last observation. Next slide, please. Again, so bonding is about building greater personal happiness. Bridging is about building greater community well-being. And I might just add that hats off to the City Club of Central Oregon, because as I look at this organization, I see both. I see people coming together because there are people like them here who believe the same things, who have the same passions about their community. But I also see the City Club, particularly in terms of its programmatic involvement, reaching out to the different differences between us as a community, to the others in our community that we don't tend to reach out to. So for our personal happiness, bonding social capital is our default and our norm, especially in this day and age. We need it. We need personal happiness more than ever. But but for our community to be happy, for community-wide, bridging social capital is more important than ever, and therein lies our challenge. And I'm going to stop there, Mo.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Such richness that you've garnered from our community over the many years that you've been here. And yeah, really, I'm so appreciative of your work. And by the way, we're doing good on time.
Oh,
good job. Yeah, that was our big worry, right? We were going to exceed our time. So there's a little equation on this slide. It goes like this: self-care plus community care equals our collective well-being. This is an equation that my firm uses with slightly different words. We say self-care plus team care equals a healthy company culture, right? But the equation seems to really work well here, and particularly building on what you were just saying around bonding and bridging capital. We've got to know how to take care of ourselves. We've got to know how to take care of each other.
Right.
And together those two things become so important. And we'll want you all to talk about that in small groups in a minute in terms of how you do that, right? So hold that thought and maybe start even like priming the pump for how do you take care of you? What are the conditions in which you thrive? And then how do you take care of us? What are the conditions what are the things you do that help us be? So we'll be getting there in a bit. But I want to linger, and we're going to have a little conversation first and before we set you off into small groups. And you were talking about some of the generational differences, and I wanted to tell you a quick story, Stephen. I got a text from my youngest. My youngest is 23, lives in Portland, COVID dropout, working hard, supporting themselves, but has struggled, as many young people have, with anxiety. But I got a text the other day. It was the funniest thing. I had accidentally texted them from the beach saying, ouch, the sand is hot. It was supposed to go to my friend that I was with, but it went to my kid. And she texts a question mark. Oh, sorry, I was talking to my friend. So then she texts me back, oh, as if I don't have enough. No, she said, be careful out there. As if I don't have enough to worry about. I heard a story today of a guy that got third-degree burns from serving his shift at the hot dog stand. She said, as if there's not enough for me to be anxious about. Now I have to think about this. And I was like, that's a heavy load. That's a heavy load. We wonder about the anxiety that people carry. And so I'm curious, from where you sit and how you see it in the work that you've done, how do we pursue happiness when things are so bad? How do we do it? Can we be happy in dark moments?
I think so. I just want to make sure my mic was on. Yeah, I think we can, but it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, that's the whole point, I think, of our conversation. Hang on just one second.
No, you do what you need to do. I'm going to do what I need to do, which is I'm supposed to be the timekeeper, so I have to get my phone in front of me so I can see. Perfect.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, as I alluded to my remarks, particularly, I think the last 5 years has been a mess, honestly, both globally, even nationally. Beginning with the pandemic, that was such a change for everybody. The wars in Ukraine and Gaza, climate change, the anger and division. there is a lot to be. And, it's so like, now I have to walk on hot sand,
right,
on top of that.
Or the hot dog stand is dangerous?
Yeah.
Come on.
I would actually go so far, and, full disclosure, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, but I would go so far to say that I think our entire nation over the last few years has been experiencing a kind of low-grade trauma, just this kind of slight rise in tension, slight rise in anxiety. I'm just curious, how many people sleep as well today as they did 5 years ago?
Oh, wow. A couple of you.
A few handfuls.
A few hands
How many
went up.
do not sleep as well? Okay, all right. I know that's certainly true with me as well, too. So it's out there. But the one thing I want to say is that this notion of happiness, it is a little bit superficial, just personal happiness. Yeah, of course we all want to be happy. But Mo and I were talking and preparing for this. There was a fantastic article in the Times, New York Times, last week called, "Are We Happy Yet?"
Yeah.
And I thought, oh boy, this is really timely. And I really encourage you to read it. And it's very interesting. The author talks about what she calls the happiness mania. And, these lists that we all get on our phones, the 10 things you can do to be happier. There's all these lists out there these days, including, as she said, apps for tracking your happiness score. Oh, I can see I'm down a little bit today. I need to check that again. And I love what she said. I forget the author's name, but she said, a graph cannot capture the experience of being alive. And so I just have to diverge briefly now. Mo and anybody who knows me well knows that I'm a bit of a classics nut. I've been reading. It's one thing I've done since the beginning of the pandemic is starting to read the ancient classics. Me and my reading partner have read 20 different books over the last 4 years that are all back from that time. And the ancient Greek concept of happiness, eudaimonia, it's sort of the opposite of pandemonia, was about living, not being happy, but living a fulfilled life. And to me, that's it in a nutshell. It's not about what makes you this, passing, fleeting sense of, oh, I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, what a great concert, wasn't that a funny joke that they just made on TV, whatever. It's about living a good life that has meaning and purpose and really just being one's best. And I think that, to me, is the type of happiness that, we can do. So if you separate those two things, the fleeting happiness of, pleasure seeking, from this deeper sense of happiness that is about, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm making a difference in some small way. To me, that's much more lasting, much more enduring, and something that we should be aiming for.
I love that. I love that. And I also love this idea that if we think of happiness as fleeting, we also it helps us remember that pain is fleeting, fear is fleeting, anxiety is fleeting. All of our emotions they flow through us. We don't get stuck in them forever, although it can feel that way sometimes. I think David Wilcox, who's a musician, has a great line in one of his songs that says, when I'm depressed, I can't remember being happy. And when I'm happy, I have no recollection of being depressed, which I think is sort of how it can feel. So kind of if we can notice, gosh, just pursuing happiness maybe is frivolous and not the right focus. Maybe I can notice those moments of joy or well-being and really appreciate them because of the darker moments. Yeah.
What I would add to that is that I just have to say, for a lot of people, happiness is about things.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the new SUV, I'm glad, whatever your version of, stuff that you want to have, and we all have that desire to have nice stuff, but to equate that with happiness is pretty fleeting.
Very fleeting,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. As the longest study on happiness from Harvard's longitudinal study on happiness really proves, right? What matters in the end is relationships, which gets to our collective well-being. So I'm curious, Stephen, you've worked with our local communities and lots of communities around the world, and I'm kind of combining 2 and 3. And despite all these culture wars, the climate change, all the dark things that are out there, you've noticed something I think is really interesting, which is that when local communities really think about themselves and try to work together for solutions, they don't get stuck in just all the storm and drang, right? Something else magical happens. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen happen to communities when they really look at their own thriving together.
Yeah. I just want to point out, she just said Sturm und Drang. It's like, wow, I love when people use that phrase. That is so cool.
I'm not sure I know what it means, but I
it
I
means
learned
storm
it.
and stress. Sturm und Drang is storm and stress.
Okay. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I have to say...
No, my dad taught me that. I'm not treating you like you're my dad.
Anyway, all my work that I've done with local communities, I mean, if there's an Uber theme that keeps coming up again and again and again, is that the more local you get, the less important partisan politics, for example, is important. There's not a Republican or a Democratic way to fix a pothole or to, to make sure that every child has school lunch or to dedicate a new park. And I think people at the local level get that. I would say currently with my work that I'm doing with Julia and company from COIC, just a little shout out there, and Nick, really makes that very evident that when you start talking to people at the local level, they don't even want to talk about, that partisan stuff. They want to talk about how do we solve problems? How do we get stuff done? And I would say for all the Sturm und Drang, that's happening at the national level, when you get down to the local level, it doesn't make so much of a difference. Have, nasty politics seeped into local communities? Yes, I'll be the first to acknowledge that. We've seen some of that here in Bend, for example. But I think really when people set about to doing good things, doing good work and solving problems, they get beyond that very quickly. And to me, that is very affirming, because I think we all know that despite the drama and the tension at the national level, that we're a good country, full of great people who want to do good things. And I really see that. I'm so privileged and honored that the work that I do, I get to experience that in the work that I do. And, this is a shout out to all those people who are out there every day doing something to make their community a better place, because it makes a difference. It might make them happy personally, but it definitely works better towards collective well-being of the community.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I love that you've actually noticed that in the planning process. And it strikes me, we think about in the workplace, which is kind of my milieu the most, when we think about engagement, which is one of those words that gets bandied about, not necessarily sure what it means. I think of employee engagement at work as the psychological and emotional connection we feel to the workplace and to the workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about engagement in community does the same thing. And there's a little section in that movie I mentioned, Bodie Miller's film about the paradoxes of paradise, or Trouble in Paradise, I think it's called. And they talk about how one of the things that happens in mountain towns is that people move there often for skiing or mountain biking. They get engaged in that activity, and they actually lack engagement in the local issues. And so it's powerful, especially if you're on the mountain, let's say, or in a job that doesn't pay you enough to live in an area where you feel that you're thriving or you feel disconnected. But so what you're saying is powerful around how is it I can get engaged, which then really increases my connection to everything that's happening and may reduce the risk that I end up feeling isolated and run into mental health challenges.
And depressed and anxious.
Absolutely.
And lonely.
Which is the hardest thing to do. When you're feeling anxious, depressed, and lonely, it's very, very difficult to get engaged, which is why I think it's on all of us to figure out ways to engage people across, bridging social capital across, because there may be someone we don't know or haven't seen that could be engaged in a different way with what we're doing.
Funny that you should mention that, because one of the things I think about is, and a shout out to another group, to Envision Bend and their work that they're doing, certainly with the Vision Action Plan that I know was presented to the City Club, I think late last year.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. If you haven't read the plan yet, I really encourage you to do that. There are 28 strategies in there. They really range the map from, how do we be a more inclusive community? How do we be a more resilient community in terms of climate change? How do we be more sustainable? How do we be more prosperous? All of those things come together, and there's a strategy addressing all of those things in the plan. And I really think it's about building collective community well-being. There are strategies in there that are very geeky, planner-oriented strategies about, the physical development of the city, but ultimately, at their base, they have something about human connection. One of my favorite strategies in there, and this really grew out of that conversation, was the idea of building on, we're all familiar with the Hawthorne Street overcrossing that's going to go over the freeway and the BNSF Railroad, which is fantastic. Just saw that design, as I'm sure you did, this week, and what a beautiful thing. What a iconic structure to have built in Bend, and it's great that they have the money for it too. But in the Envision Bend Action Plan, the idea is, well, how do we build on that? How do we extend it? And the vision is, wouldn't it be great to walk or bike, from Drake Park all the way to Juniper Park, through downtown in a pedestrian corridor where there are people out on the streets, dining and whatever, and crossing over the railroad and the bridge to the new city hall that we hope will be somewhere on 3rd Street potentially in the future, and on to Juniper Park. What a wonderful thing. So a physical improvement, an upgrade of our city that will really add a world-class feature to us. But what I want to point out is the symbolism beneath it of connecting our community, connecting East and West, connecting people who frankly are more affluent and have more at their disposal than people who perhaps live on the East Side. And bringing that bridging, literally it is bridging social capital, both in engineering terms and also in terms of human and social terms, and what a positive thing I think that is.
Well, I love that, and I'm thinking as you share that, I'm thinking about the time that it takes to make those kinds of changes happen in a community. You know, I'm remembering when we first had Bend 2030, we had trouble getting anyone from the east side to even attend meetings. We had to figure out ways to have meetings over there, and that's been, you know, that was, what, almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I lived here on the west side for many, many years, now live on the east side, sort of in central, and it's almost like a whole different town. So yes, we're getting there, and it's slow. So, which makes for me a compelling case for engagement individually in community well-being, knowing that I'm holding the possibility of a future that works.
Yeah.
Which is why I love the plan from Envision Bend, is it gives me hope that there's that we're thinking
Yeah,
ahead. You know?
absolutely.
So before we get them into small groups, anything else you hope for in terms of this tension of balancing individual well-being and community well-being?
I think, no, I don't know that I would add too much to it, other than this, again, this notion of the difference between human happiness and human fulfillment. I think the same equation applies to our community as well, too. We can have a community that's mainly happy most of the time, with some stark, exceptions to that rule, or we can have a community that's really deeply connected. And I think Bend has always been there, and Central Oregon as well, too, has always been on top of that game. But in this era of, social tension and division and all that stuff, it's hard to hang on to that stuff, and we really want to do that. Last thing I was going to do was share my personal plan for avoiding anxiety in 2024. And this is a combination of things. I see Ruth Williamson smiling out there because some of it comes from her wisdom. I was really thinking about, this is such a difficult year for all of us. How do we keep our sense of being grounded? How do we keep our sense of, being fully in the moment and yet contributing to what the future, not only of our community will be, but the future of our country? And from a different podcasts and articles that I read, I came up with 3 things that I'm trying to do. The first is really fascinating to me. It's called, it's a response to this notion of what they call attention fracking, that all those algorithms out there on your social media platforms are designed to keep you clickbaiting, to keep you doom scrolling. And it's really destructive. It's especially destructive to young children. And I'm fully supportive of some kind of control over how much kids are allowed to do social media at an early age. But so the notion is, find your attention sanctuary. Find that place where you go, where you turn off your devices, where you plug out from all that snarky stuff that you see online, and just do something that's personally rewarding and beneficial. So I think, it could be, mountain biking, or being in a book club, or cooking, or for me, it's reading Greek tragedy. The second thing is also not wanting to feel like I haven't made some kind of contribution to where we are in the world today. So my second point of my plan is to put my energy and resources where my values are. I think you saw up there on the screen that when it comes to our personal values, they're all pretty noble things. I didn't see anything up on that screen that said, oh, that's not a good value. And so how do you make that value more present in the world? And so there's something each of us can do in terms of our time and our money, frankly, like making a contribution to the City Club that was pitched to us earlier today. I hope you fill out your green
Nicely
form.
done. They did not pay him to do that.
They didn't pay me $20 to do that, to say that. And the third point is answer this question, and to this I take my hat off to Ruth and her work, which is, what is mine to do? What is that thing that I can do? Maybe not me alone, but that I have a special gift or a kind of talent to do that's going to make a difference in the world. And this just brings it all back home to that notion of self-fulfillment, or eudaimonia, this feeling that, I can do something. And I actually am doing some things. I'm writing some letters to editors and doing other stuff like that I feel like I can do to make my contribution. So as my closing remark, I would really invite each and every one of you to answer that question, not what is yours to do, what is mine to do? What is that thing I can do? And make a commitment to doing that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love attention sanctuary. I love putting your resources behind your values, and figuring out, what is mine to do. Makes a difference to all. So we want to hear want to give you a chance to talk for a few minutes before we wrap. And there's 2 questions we would like you to tackle. And I think they're on the next slide. And my suggestion is this. My suggestion is that you talk to one person. Because if you try to talk to the whole table, A, you will not have time, and B, it will get extremely loud in here, and it'll be quieter if you just talk to one person. So just find somebody at your table or sitting behind you, and we want you to talk about 2 things in the next 5 minutes or so. One is, what is your top strategy for personal happiness and well-being? What's one thing that you can think of that when you tend to that thing, you just are doing better? You're more grounded, you're doing better. The second is to tackle this question Stephen just shared. What is yours to do for our community's collective well-being? You may have something you're already doing. It may be something aspirational that you're thinking, gosh, that is something that I'd like to do that I think could actually benefit community, even just with a neighbor or with the broader community, whatever that means for you. Now, I do have one request as you talk to your partner, and that is that when it comes to question 2, if you can, write any of those down that you come up with on the sticky notes that are on your table. So if you could write down for each other, if you hear an idea of what somebody's going to do for community collective well-being, just write it down. And as we exit, after we wrap, we're just going to have we're going to have some volunteers come collect them. We're going to post them and just offer that as a takeaway for ideas for collective well-being. So short conversation with a partner. What is your top strategy for your own well-being? And then secondly, what is yours to do for community well-being? All right, we'll call you back in a few minutes. Good job.
your attention for just one more moment. Thank you, thank you. Table hosts, if you can collect any outtakes from the conversation that people shared and take them to the back to be gathered up by Kim or Quinn Rose.
Attention up
Are
front.
we listening?
Attention up front.
Do I need to do that? Yeah. Let me bring us to a close. I love the energy in the room. Okay. With your permission, thank you so much. First of all, just to close us, okay, so we get to savor this moment for one more moment. I just want to thank Stephen and Mo. Wasn't that conversation just delightful? Thank you so much. Really. It was. I could have listened all day. I also want to thank each of you for being here today, for taking time to gather in community. I think it's so precious that we do this. If you'll indulge me very briefly, I just want to return to the questions that Mo posed at the beginning. What drew you to Central Oregon? What drew you to Central Oregon? For me, it was community, 100%. And what makes it hard to stay? Again, for me, it's this belief that the very sense of community that I love could be eroded as a consequence of unattended growth, not paying attention, getting just caught up in the wave of it all. Conversation creates community. That is the mission of City Club. And I also want to note that it's an example of bridging social capital, now that we know what that is. And you may not know this, but City Club is an all-volunteer organization. And our work requires funding to deliver high-quality forums every single month. So here's how you can be a part of City Club. On your table are pledge forms with a QR code. If you didn't already, consider scanning that code and making a donation today to our first capital campaign. Make a pledge. You can also fill out the yellow or the green form by hand. And we have volunteers at the exits to collect your pledge cards. And as Jacob shared, you know what? We only need 10 grand. It's not a lot, but it would make a huge difference to City Club if we could have your support. So please do what you can. You can also join as a member if you're not already that. The benefits, well, you're experiencing it today. Feels pretty good to be in community. So I just want to say, as a close, thank you. Thank you for your commitment to our community. We are so grateful for your support of this important campaign, and we wish you a great rest of your week as you get out in this landscape that we love and share. Thank you so much.